Okay, on the left-hand side of my screen here, I have the latest version of Lightroom Classic, and on my right-hand side of my screen, I've got the latest version of Photoshop 2024. And what I want to do in today's session is show you the difference between the brand new Generative AI Remove tool inside of Lightroom against the Generative Fill tool inside of Photoshop. Okay, so for those of you who are not aware, Adobe just released an update to Lightroom Classic and Lightroom Cloud, which now introduces generative AI tools. Okay, today I want to take you through this tool and obviously compare it to what we already have inside of Photoshop. Okay, so before you get into this process, just make sure that you update your Lightroom Cloud and Lightroom Classic to the latest versions. Just make sure that you head on over to your Creative Cloud app and update accordingly. So you obviously run and check for the updates. Make sure that your Lightroom Classic is updated to version 13.3, and then of course Lightroom Cloud to version 7.3. Anyway, enough of that. Let's go and have a look at how this tool works. I'm going to maximize the screen over here. This image is from a session that I shot with Susan and this awesome car. For those of you who follow my tutorials, you know that this is from the Retro Polka session. I showed you guys how I shot this image, the lighting patterns that I was shooting in, the gear, etc., and then I went in and made an edit of this image and removed those background distractions, and this was the final image. So what we're going to do today is have a look at how this object remove tool works inside of the latest version of Lightroom. Okay, so what we have here is this image of Susan and this awesome car, and I've got a couple of distracting elements in the background, and what I want to do is use these tools to remove those distractions. Now, one of the very first things that you can obviously do in this instance is recrop, okay? Usually cropping can get rid of so many different distracting elements in an image, and a lot of us overlook this fact that a crop can make all that difference, okay? So this is what we're going to do in this instance. I'm going to do the obvious, okay? And that is to go and crop my image to get rid of all of these distracting elements, because I can move this frame closer to Susan. So let's go and choose a 5:7 cropped aspect ratio here and bring it in quite a lot, okay? Somewhere like that. Maybe just move it over a little bit and bring it down. And you can see that I'm slowly but surely moving Susan into the rule of thirds over here. I'm happy with that crop. I'm just going to double tap the screen there, and there we go. We've got a nice cropped view of our image. Now, what I want to do is go and play around with the AI generative tools. And where do we go and find that? It's under the healing brush over here. Okay, this healing icon or eraser icon over here. And when you're in this remove mode, make sure that you're on the eraser tool right here, and you have the generative AI ticked over here. You can see that it's obviously early access. So if there's issues, we need to report back to Adobe to fix these little bugs and fix some of the little drawbacks on this tool. Okay, so what we're going to do is remove some of these background elements. And when I look at this image, the first thing that comes to mind is these poles over here behind Susan in the car. I'd like to remove those. And then of course, this chain and bollard over here, I'd like to get rid of those. And then maybe some of these little things on those pillars in the background. Okay, those kind of draw my eye a little bit away from Susan in the car. It's not crazy because she's obviously the most brightest object or person or subject in our image. So let's go and see how this tool works. Now, the minute I clicked on the generative AI tab over here, I obviously made sure that I was in the healing brush. And now you can see that our cursor is turned into a little brush tool. And all we need to do is highlight the objects that we don't want in this image, or we want to remove these objects. So I'm going to select this first pole over here, this lamp post. Okay, I'm going to select the pole going down to the roof of the car. And I'm going to sort of edge over this way over here and select that area too. Make a quick selection across that signage over there and to the top of the car. Okay, and the minute I let go of my mouse tool, it changes to the mask refinement tool. And you can see we've got this green area over here. we are now almost ready to apply the remove tool here. Let's say, for example, you overlapped into something that you don't want to remove. All you can do is click on the subtract tool over here. This works really like our masking tools, okay? Let's just say, for example, I overlapped in that little area there. Or let's say, for example, I didn't cover everything that I want to remove. I can go back to the add tool over here and then carry on painting, okay? Obviously, you can see here that we can change the color of that selected area. But once we're happy with what we want to remove from the image, we click apply, and this is where the AI takes over and tries to generate a new area for our image. Now, bear in mind, this is still 1024 by 1024 pixels, okay? So if you select a very large area to get rid of, you might land up with lower resolution than your original image. And this is a little drawback over here because you can't upscale it and you can't change its resolution like you can in the beta version of Photoshop. But let's have a look here. You can still see that we've got poles appearing here, which is an issue. But fear not, we've got other variations over here. Okay, we can go to variation number 2, which looks a whole lot better, but there's still something going on at the top of the frame over here. Let's have a look at version number 3. As you can see here, it's still adding things in the background which we might not want there. Okay, so version number 2 looks to be the best, but it's not quite there. And I'm going to get to the reason why in just a moment. Let's carry on removing different objects. Okay, now this pole over here, the bollard, and this chain, I can also paint over that. Now, of course, our brush tool works like any of the other brush tools. And we can increase or decrease the size of that brush using our bracket keys on our keyboard. So again, I'm going to paint over this little area over here that I don't want in my image. And I'm going to follow the chain over here, go across to the edge of the car. And I'm happy with that selection. Let's click apply and let Lightroom this time generate a fill in area over here. It's going to remove what we don't want there and try and fill it in with something better. And that looks pretty awesome to me. Okay, so let's have a look at the other variations. That's number 2 and variation number 3. Something that I'd love them to add here is a little visual cue as to what it looks like. You know, the little blocks like we have in Photoshop, okay? So perhaps that's something that they can introduce at a later time. But as you can see here, we still got a chain that seems to be appearing here off the edge of the screen. Okay, there again, look at that. Okay, now here's the other little drawback of using this type of tool. Can you see what happens? The minute we actually edge over towards this filled area, our mouse pointer changes to a hand and that makes us move this area. Now, what I find a little bit annoying at this stage is the fact that I actually need to go out of the tools and back into the remove tool. And that will give me free rein to paint over other areas near to that selected area, if you know what I mean. So let's do that again. I'm going to select that little area there. Okay. And let's say, for example, I go down this pillar over here and I apply a generative fill tool to that area. Let's say, for example, I wanted to, after this is done, fill in these lines over here. I'd have to actually go out of this tool and back in to make those changes. Let's say, for example, I want to actually paint across the edge there. That wasn't too bad because I made a selection outside of that edge, okay? But that's not always going to be the case. And this is what I find a little bit of a downside to using this tool. Let's say, for example, I want to get rid of that little area there. I actually have to go out of the remove tool and back in so that I can actually paint there. If this is in the way, let's just cancel that. If that is in the way, my brush tool changes to the hand tool. Okay, so that is another little limitation of using this tool inside of Lightroom. Now, the other little issue that I discovered here is that this tool actually looks beyond the crop. Okay, this is why we're still getting those poles appearing and this chain appearing. It's not disappearing completely because why? It's actually seeing the information beyond the crop, okay? So what it means to me is that we actually have to reset our image, okay? Let's go and do that now. Reset the image, see a full view of our image, okay? And actually go in and in this full view of our crop, actually go back to our polls now, go down here, okay, grab that signage over there and that poll there, and make a selection of those two distracting objects and click apply. And you'll notice that we get a very different generated area. And I think this is great if you're not going to be cropping in and you're not going to be trying to remove things at the edge of a frame. That's going to work out fine. You can see here straight away that it's working out way, way better. Okay, let's get rid of that again. I'm going to do it again for you guys. I'm going to make a smaller brush stroke here. And in fact, I'm just going to grab that little light spot over there and just paint over that lamp over there. And then, of course, the signage right here and generate that area again. I've used this little smaller brush over here and I'm going to click apply and it's going to remove that lamp and that signage over there using AI. This is really cool, but as you can see, there was a limitation when we start cropping in our image, okay? The same goes over here. If I want to get rid of this little area over here, going up to the edge of the car, okay, going over this bollard over here, and then across the chain to the edge of the car here, I can click the apply button over here because I'm pretty much satisfied with that selection over there, and let the AI generate a new area of our image, okay? So what I want to do is talk about the other little issue that we have here. This generated area, if it's large enough, you might get a very low resolution result, okay? So I'm going to try to zoom in for us over here. So we'll look at that little area there. And on closer inspection, we can see that it actually kind of makes a little pattern on our image, okay? It's like a cross-hatched pattern. And that just tells us that it is a little bit low resolution. And the other little issue that we've got here is that there's a little minor difference between the noise pattern of the generated area and the noise pattern on the rest of the image, okay? So that's where the other little hiccup comes from when using this tool inside of Lightroom. You can't go in to that selected area and actually add noise to it, okay? So your noise patterns match up with the rest of the image. Now let's have a look at this post over here, or this signpost over here. Let's go into our remove tools. And here's the really cool thing is that obviously you've got these little mark points over here to show you where you've got these objects removed. You can click on them again. And let's say, for example, you go through all of these options and not quite happy. You can go refresh and it will give you 3 new samples in that area. Okay. Let's go over this little signpost over here. Grab that little area there. Okay. And let's say, for example, we click apply here and we're happy with what it does there, or happy with our selection. Let's wait for it to fill in that little area. And of course, I'm just going to demonstrate that little issue again, where our cursor moves from our brush tool into the hand tool because it's looking at this area over here. And again, you can see that there's a little sign over there. And that just means that we haven't completely grabbed the bottom of this pole over here. Even if we go through the different variations there, there's still going to be a pole there because we missed the pole right here. And I think this brings us on to the other little issue we've got with this. Zooming into these little areas creates a bit of a problem for us, making sure that we've got a good selection. Now we can go in and refine that selection, of course, by clicking add, and we can add in the bottom of that pole. And then, of course, click apply again, and that's going to give us a decent result, okay? Now, zooming in and out in images inside of Lightroom is a little bit iffy for me, at least. I prefer doing this process inside of Photoshop, okay? Which brings me on to how we're going to do this inside of Photoshop and how is it different to Lightroom, okay? So as you can see here, we can still successfully remove objects inside of Lightroom. And I think that's a big plus, okay? Obviously, the little things like trying to grab this little white spot over here just means I actually have to go out of that tool and back in so I can actually grab that little area there again. It's those little things that for me personally, I feel could slow a process down. Let's go and test this theory. What I'm going to do is reset this image, okay? Let's go to reset our development settings. And let's just open up Photoshop here quickly. We've got the image right here. And what we're going to do is apply the same crop. Let's just grab this little area over here. What we're going to do is just crop our image in. Okay, so like I said, we're going to crop out these unnecessary distractions right here. Okay, let's do that. Let's go to our 5x7 crop and then bring our crop in over here, just like we did earlier inside of Lightroom. And then, of course, the other thing you can see here that if I actually crop this image and go beyond the extended area, I can generate new pixels at the bottom of my frame. And this is something that you can't do inside of Lightroom at this stage. You can't crop it like this and then generate new bricks over here. You know, that's just not something that's possible. Okay, so that's another little limitation of trying to do it inside of Lightroom. Okay, so let's test what happens here now. Okay, for me, I can actually make more accurate selections here with my selection tool. So I'm going to go over to the lasso tool here, grab that little area there, and you can see that I can come in much closer with this tool here. And obviously, I'm going to do exactly the same here. I'm going to grab that pole over there. And one of the other things that you've instantly noticed is that I was able to actually use the scrubby zoom to get in there really, really quick. There wasn't a dilly-dally of, holding different keys to zoom in. There was none of that. So what we're going to do now is just click Generate Fill and click Generate. And the other difference here, of course, is that if I want to generate a specific thing in this area here, I can actually type a prompt. Now, maybe Adobe is going to rework those tools to include prompts, and they obviously, or I'm hoping, they rework the variations view. Okay, over here, I can instantly see a little tiny thumbnail as to what is generated in that area. And if you look closely here, obviously we've got a very small generated area. And one of the great things is that if our generated areas pixels don't match the rest of our image, we can go to this layer over here and we can, for example, go to filter, go to the noise filter and add noise into those specific areas. In fact, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Can you see my original image? It's got a little bit of noise in this little area here, yet outside of that area, that noise pattern changes. Let's look at that generated area. Look here, it's actually noise free compared to the rest of my image. Now, obviously we're getting to zoom in quite quickly here and very efficiently here. And what I do need to do in this instance to match my generated area to the rest of my image, I need to actually add in a little bit of noise, okay? And this is the advantage of doing this process inside of Photoshop rather than trying to do it inside of Lightroom at this stage, because we can't add noise in Lightroom to that generated area, but I can do so inside of Photoshop. And this is why I wanted to discuss this with you guys today in this video, okay? So I can easily go now to the filter menu, go down to noise, and I can go to add noise, and then I can adjust the noise amount according to that which is in my image, okay? So 2.45 is a little bit too much. I can go 1.5, for example. That's still too much. 1.0, that's still a little bit much. So let's have a look here. 0.80, that's closer to it, maybe 0.60. And there we go. We're very close to it now, maybe 0.50. And we've got a noise pattern in our generated area that matches in with the rest of our image, okay? Now, the other thing that sometimes happens is when we generate a fill, sometimes the illumination changes, okay? So let's try it out. I can't promise you that it's going to happen in this particular image, but sometimes when we make a selection like this to remove something or fill in an area, the exposure changes by, it's actually such a small amount, but sometimes I can see it. And what I need to sometimes do is actually lighten the generated area up a little bit. Okay, let's click Generate Fill. Of course, we've got the option here to add our prompts, but I'm not going to add in anything here. I want to let Photoshop take care of removing this and replacing it with something conducive to the rest of our image. Let's click Generate. and we'll wait a moment. And of course, this is still using the Adobe Firefly technology. Okay, so we're not stepping back because we're using Photoshop. We're still getting the same technology, the same AI algorithm. But look at that, okay? Now, here's the really cool thing. If for whatever reason that generated area was a little bit darker, we could obviously add in a little bit of lightness, and this starts adding in the smart filters, which are bonuses because we can go back and edit those after the fact, okay? So we can go in here, click on the little box over here, and I can go, for example, image adjustments, and I can make an adjustment to the brightness for that little generated area. And you can see here, it's, if it was darker, for example, I would lighten it to match in with the rest of the image. And then, of course, I can still take that smart filter for the noise over there and then just move it up to the generated fill area over there, and we get a matching noise pattern. This is why I actually still like using the generative fill tools inside of Photoshop rather than trying to do it inside of Lightroom, okay? So yes, for those of you who work in Lightroom exclusively, this is a huge update for you guys. And, I'd feel pretty happy to remove things in this way over here. Let's just do it again quickly. Grab those poles over there and grab this little area over here. If you're not too concerned with those little hiccups, by all means, use the remove tool here to get rid of distracting or unwanted objects in your images, okay? We'll try and get rid of this car and see what happens in this case here. I have actually seen issues with objects closer to the edges of images, okay? And this is another little drawback. Let's go and try and remove this car here. Let's see what happens, okay? I'm going to grab the shadow as well and then just paint right up to the edges of that frame. And let's just see if it actually gets rid of the car, okay? Let's click apply here and let Lightroom remove that car and hopefully replace it with something else rather than just another car. I think I tested this yesterday and it was giving me different versions of a car. But there we go. We've got that perfected, okay? So let's have a look at the other variations there. That actually looks a lot better there. For whatever reason yesterday, and I think it was to do with the edge of the frame, it was adding in another car. In fact, let's just test that quickly. I'm going to crop this image in. Let's just crop it to the front of the bumper of the car there, roughly. Maybe across the wheels here. Okay, somewhere there. Let's just crop that in. And let's go back to our remove tools here. And then just paint over the front of the car here quickly. Let's just grab the front of the car here. And this is going to reinforce what I said earlier on. It's looking at pixels beyond the crop. Okay, let's go and apply. And let's see if we can remove that edge of the car. And I can tell you now, it's going to put another bonnet of the car there. Yeah, see exactly what I was talking about, okay? No matter how many options we've got here, it's looking at the data beyond the crop, okay? So this is a limitation at this stage, which I hope Adobe is going to address in future updates, okay? So obviously, if you want to remove that car completely, we've actually got to see the entire image. What we need to do now is go back to our remove tool here, go and refine that option there, or refine that remove tool, and select the car at this level here with this crop, and then click apply, and you'll see that it gets rid of the car because it doesn't see any other information beyond the crop. Only when we crop down and try and remove objects at the edge of our frame does this happen. Okay, there we go. You see, instantly we removed the car. So if you have to use Lightroom only with these tools, then I would suggest try to remove these objects in your uncropped view, because the minute that you start adding in that crop and trying to get rid of things on the edge, it's going to look at the pixels beyond the crop. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And then, of course, like I said, the other little issue that I've got here is where my hand tool sort of switches between the brush and the hand tool here. And I can't sort of grab this little area without going on the outside over here, or without going out into my normal editing options over here and then coming back to the remove tools, okay? So there you have it, guys. Today's session was all about exploring the capabilities of this new generative remove tool inside of Lightroom and seeing how it stacks up with what we have inside of Photoshop. I mean, as you could see here, for me, it was way more intuitive to work inside of Photoshop because we've got the options of obviously adding in noise after the fact. And I'm pretty sure that we will soon see the upscale options for these generated areas from the 1024 pixel by 1024 pixel aspect ratio to higher resolutions. This is something that is already available in the beta version of Photoshop, but I won't cover it today. But those are, of course, some of the bonuses, okay? So guys, I hope this has been an informative session today, and I hope you go out there this week and shoot and edit awesome portraits for your clients. So folks, I hope you enjoyed the session, and we'll see you in the next tutorial. Ciao for now.